I'm William Stewart. Welcome back to our verse-by-verse study on the book of Galatians. I'm glad you're with us today. Really a wonderful epistle, directed, of course, to the church, as all the epistles are in the New Testament, from Romans to Revelation chapter 3. This is what we obey, our marching orders from God through Christ and the apostles during our Christian life, and how we come to salvation. And, of course, a greater knowledge of God than what has been revealed before. So the epistles are very key to our lives. We're in Galatians, which gives us even more information on our Christian life and the nature of Christ's work in our lives in his death and resurrection. So full of great knowledge, as typical. Paul, who wrote the book, divides his book up into both a Christology about Christ and Christian walk sections. But this book differs a little bit, that it has a historical introduction in the first chapter and a half, and then he talks about our basis, our relationship with God in our faith alone, in the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. He does that because the purpose of the book is to drive the Galatians to live a life of faith in their Christian life. And we're in verses 10 and 11 in chapter 3 today. Paul continues his push towards them in steering them away from the law as a basis for the Christian life. There were probably many Jews in Galatia at this time. And he says, "For as many as are the works of the law are under the curse. For it is written, Cursed is everyone that continueth not in all things which are written in the book of the law to them." So this comes from Deuteronomy 28:26. And Paul's essentially saying that you have to do all the things of the law. Once you have dedicated yourself to the law, that you might stand before God, at least by your works, as righteous, then you have to do everything. It has to be perfect. Now, of course, we know from last week and the week before that the law does not make a person righteous, because they're depraved, they're fallen from Adam's sin. So even if you manage to do everything in the law, a person still stands condemned before God and Christ. So, but he does say, if you're going to try it, if you're going to do it, you got to do it perfectly. And I think he's doing this to indicate to the Galatians, that's pretty hard, and you probably already blew it years ago. So why are you even trying? We live by faith. So then in verse 11, he reiterates that no man is justified by the law in the sight of God, as it is evident that the just shall live by faith. So here he returns it back to Father Abraham, because you remember in the prior several weeks, he made clear that salvation is based in Abraham, the Abrahamic covenant, for which, remember, there were three promises: that Abraham would have a son, a sign that the other two promises would be fulfilled, that a great nation, which is Israel, will be through him in the coming generations, and then also all the nations of the world will be blessed, which of course is Messiah and salvation. Abraham believed God, and was accounted to him, credited to him, considered to him as righteousness. He stood righteous before God by his faith, as opposed to later the law came as a stopgap measure to help create the nation Israel and order them and teach them about Christ, so that they could produce Messiah. That is, in a biblical sense, their major purpose was to give Messiah so all the world would be blessed. So he goes back then in verse 11, confirming that yes, it is by faith. Your faith is based in Abraham. Salvation is based in Abraham and not by the law. Okay, so what have we learned today? We've learned that Again, salvation is by faith. It's not by our works, it's by faith alone. And from other verses, such as Ephesians 2, 8, and 9, and Romans 10 and 9, verse 9, is by faith in the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. We receive salvation by grace, a free gift. We don't work towards it, either for salvation or after we're saved in our Christian life. We don't prove to people that we're Christian and have to prove ourselves by our works. We don't live by our works. We live by faith. Okay, thank you for joining me today. We'll continue this discussion of faith versus works and what Christ did for us and how it's based in the Old Testament as a forerunner to what Christ came and did on the cross and what we have now in the epistles and how we live. Okay, I'll see you next time. Goodbye for now.